Hey everybody, welcome to the Midweek Rewind. Once again, I am Matt, this is Brent. We're excited to be with you for another 30 minutes here, as we are every week. If you're with us live, of course, you can hop on and join us if you have any questions, or you can just hang out with us and listen for a little bit. But we enjoy doing this, and we're thankful for those of you who take time to watch with us. So hello and happy Thursday. Brent, happy Thursday to you.
Thank you.
How are you today?
I am doing fine. People ask how I'm doing every week, and these 5 or 6 weeks, it's just classic for it's exciting, it's overwhelming. We got this big forward campaign. It's kind of like the adrenaline rush that's always there, and you're thinking, man. So yeah, it's great. We're in the middle of this big thing, and I love it. I'm so thankful that God allows me to be a part of our church, and we're a great church. We've got so much, progress we need to make, but forward campaign, and it's exciting. New day. Yep. So yeah, I'm doing great.
Good.
Doing great.
It is an exciting time for sure. So speaking of that, we just wrapped, last Sunday was the third week, your third sermon in the series. We talked a little bit about Titus, and you kind of had 2 words that kind of anchored the service of eager and trustworthy. So let's start today with Titus's eagerness.
Okay.
It doesn't explicitly say that, but it just shows that he was really excited to be a part of this. So explain how Titus was a part of this whole giving project.
So there's a church in Jerusalem, and they were going through hard times. And so Paul is trying to rally some other churches to help out. And as it turns out, Titus, who is another pastor, Paul led him to the Lord. He was like the genius, hey, we ought to help them. And so he had always been eager to be a part of a generosity journey of challenging other churches to be generous. And he was willing. We put that map up yesterday, go 350 by slow boat, 350 miles across the Mediterranean from Turkey to Greece, and then go 800 miles back down to Jerusalem, or take the slow-mo route, across land for 1,800. So
that's something we forget when we're just reading the Bible. I think we just skim over that. But he traveled over 1,000 miles.
Oh yeah, just to deliver some money
with no cars or airplanes or anything.
Right.
Like he's just carrying people's money, and
you couldn't wire transfer it.
And that would take a long time.
There wasn't a Emprise Bank of Jerusalem,
right?
That you could just do it. You brought up an interesting point while we were talking here 5 minutes ago. We don't know if Titus dug into his own wallet. Okay. We don't know if Titus was tithing to his own church,
the First MB Church in Jerusalem,
or whatever. My assumption is that, and I know it's bad to assume, but since Paul led him to the Lord, and Paul was so passionate that Titus was like one of his number 2 guys that traveled with him, that he's not going to have that guy if he isn't tuned up on what generosity is. So my assumption is he was also contributing financially, but clearly he loved being a part of generosity. And there is an eagerness, and we're going to unpack that a whole bunch more this Sunday when we look at that famous passage, God loves a cheerful giver. Okay, so we're going to get some pushback on Sunday too, by the way. I'm already anticipating it, good, because I'm going to say some things that are new or that some people won't quite agree with. So show up on Sunday if that teaser can get you there.
There you go.
But yeah, he was eager.
One thing we've hit on a little bit, and part of the campaign we've been talking about, we want 100% engagement. We want you to give generously, sacrificially, no matter what your income is. But I thought it'd be interesting to talk a little bit about donating your time or your gifts a little bit, because I've heard a couple of people say, I'm in a season where I'm going to be generous. I'll keep tithing, but like that's probably all I can do right now. But I want to help by giving more time, or I have this talent that I'm willing to do that I'd usually charge for. I've actually had people say that to me. They're in a season where it's hard, but they want to serve or give in other ways. What would you talk about that? Is that still the eagerness we're talking about, or what would you say about that?
Well, I think God's happy when we volunteer to teach Sunday school, or when we spend time with a neighbor and drive them to the hospital. I mean, whenever we're trying to be light in a dark world and help people find and follow Jesus with our energy, our talents, our gifts and our skills. I think God's thankful for that.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe that a person can substitute giving on Sunday morning with teaching Sunday school or volunteering as a youth leader. In other words, it's fine for you to give financially to the church and then say, right now, that's all I can give. And so above and beyond that, instead of giving money, I'm giving service,
Mm-hmm.
like I'm volunteering. That's great. But you can't substitute your basic financial generosity with volunteering.
Gotcha.
Like that's not
right. So it's a great supplement, but not a substitute.
Hey, well said.
Alliteration.
Some people say, yeah, I got my kids in Christian education. And so, yes, that's just part of our tithe. No,
Mm-hmm.
that's not.
Right.
I got my parents and they're aging and they don't have a lot of money. And so they're living with us and I'm having to support them. And so that's part of my generosity to God. No.
Mm-hmm. Right.
If God in his hard providence gifted you with parents who don't have the means,
Mm-hmm.
Timothy said, if you don't care for your own family, you're worse than an unbeliever. And so I know it sounds harsh, but
Mm-hmm.
volunteering is never a substitute for financial generosity.
Right.
It can be a supplement.
Mm-hmm.
Well said.
You can tweet that.
Tweet
Brent.
that.
All right.
Tweet
That's
that.
good. Well, and we've been saying this throughout the campaign that this isn't meant to be a harsh guilt trip. And you said several times, start somewhere. So,
Oh, yeah.
so if you are in one of those situations, just do something to kind of ratchet up where you're at. So,
God is full of grace and he
Mhm.
looks to the heart.
Yep.
And so your intentions matter.
Yep.
Okay.
One of your lines from Sunday that I remember and I wrote down to talk about today is just the whole idea of eternal ROI, the return on investment of your gifts. And anything we can buy, even things like a house or a car, instantly value is affected by, stock market, or we run too many miles on it or whatever. But giving to this mission and this, even giving to a building, you're giving to the things that will happen in this building that will far outweigh the building. So do you want to, anything else?
That's what Jesus said. He just didn't use the word ROI.
Right.
He said, do not store up, Matthew 6, do not store up treasures on earth where moth and rust destroy.
Mm-hmm.
And what he's saying is, he wasn't saying don't ever buy a car, don't ever go on a vacation, don't ever eat at a restaurant, don't ever put money in the stock market.
Mm-hmm.
He wasn't saying that. What he's saying, that word store up, it really means to heap.
Okay.
And so don't heap up a bunch here
Mm-hmm.
and not heap up a bunch in heaven.
Right.
And his ROI, return on investment, was car, vacation, meal at a restaurant, a house,
Mm-hmm.
saving for retirement. That's moth and rust stuff.
Right.
Because it has a limited shelf life.
Mm-hmm.
So if you heap it up here,
Mm-hmm.
like dumb, heap it up there.
Mm-hmm.
In heaven, store up treasures, heap them up in heaven. And that's investing in people, in ministries, in churches, in parachurch,
Mm-hmm.
helping the poor, because there you're literally going to have people in heaven
Mm-hmm.
because of your money. And that's eternal. But now we have some economic language that Jesus didn't have, but it's the same principle.
Yep.
Same principle.
That's good to remember. So eager was kind of the first part of your message, but you spent quite a bit of time talking about the trustworthy part of this, and that people are more anxious to give if they know that they can really trust that whoever they're giving their money to is trustworthy. They're going to do what they say. They're ethical, biblical. So real quick, I'll read 2 verses, and then I want to hear your thoughts on this. So these are both verses that you mentioned on Sunday. And I think it's verse 20. Paul writes, "We are careful so that no one will criticize us about the way we are handling this large gift."
Okay.
So that's one. And then we want to do what the Lord accepts as right, and also what people think is right. So Paul was intentional about, we're going to be careful with this money, honoring God and honoring the people who are giving, how they use that money. So why don't you remind us, fill in any gaps of what else we talked about on Sunday with that.
So Paul sent Titus and 2 unnamed men.
Mhm.
And both of these unnamed men, he kind of vetted them. He said these people were voted on, these two unnamed men, they were voted on, they have integrity, the churches trust them. And so Paul went out of his way to say, this is a large sum of money.
Mhm.
And on the 800-mile boat ride back to Jerusalem, they're not going to be skimming off the top
Mhm.
for meals or whatever. You can
iPads.
trust, you can trust them. Okay. People give to an organization if they think the mission is being accomplished.
Mhm.
So you give to a Christian college like Tabor or Sterling.
Mhm.
People will give if they think it's accomplishing its mission of training up Christian men and women to make a difference in the world. So the mission, if they think the mission is being accomplished, they're more apt to give.
Mhm.
Secondly, if they think the money isn't being wasted, it's being handled well.
Right.
And you really need both of those.
Mhm.
And then people are pretty eager to give.
Yeah.
It's accomplishing something, and the money is being stewarded well.
Right.
And so we did spend some time on Sunday talking about how we want you to feel good that we are handling this money well.
Mhm.
We talked about the audits.
Yep.
We have the checks and balances, multiple signatures. When they count the cash on Sunday,
Mhm.
they have a person who, or multiple people who count the cash,
Mhm.
write a number.
Yep.
And then
Different.
other people count it, and the number has to match.
Yep.
Okay. We endorse. So immediately every check is endorsed
Mhm.
so that there's not for deposit only an account number.
Right.
I mean, we take these measures
Mhm.
to ensure that A, we're doing it right, but
Mhm.
B, they can trust us.
Right.
We have 331 lines.
Mhm.
Our leadership board sees all of those. They have line item veto power.
Mhm.
Those all have to be defended. The board spends hours
Mhm.
every fall making sure that every line is defendable.
Yep.
Okay. Now, I don't even agree with all 331 lines.
Right.
But here's how family works. When Joan and I, or you and Tilly, have different opinions about how much to spend on a steak,
Mhm. Mhm.
should you buy that new gadget or not? I mean,
Right.
two people don't agree on how to spend money,
That's right.
let alone
Over
900.
1,000. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
But I understand that I have passion for some of those numbers, that
Mhm.
ministry, more than they do. And I want them to lean in on mine. So I'll lean in on theirs.
Yep.
None of the 331 lines are ethical.
Mhm.
All of them advance the cause of Christ.
Mhm.
All of them are defendable.
Yep.
Now, they're not, that's part of trusting, but we have a process that works through that. So we work pretty hard as a church on earning the trust. And we don't let people know often enough that they can trust us. I mean,
Mhm.
it's good for them to hear that we have these measures in place.
Right.
The staff does not recommend the budget to the church.
Right.
The leadership board, that's
Yep.
another check and balance.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yep.
That's just how our church operates.
Yeah, and I mean, from the staff point of view, so we submit a request to the leadership board, but everything we submit comes back to us and says, "Well,
Have
what
you
about
been
this?"
told no?
Yo, absolutely,
So,
absolutely, I
yeah,
have.
because
And-
it's not right
Right.
without checks and balances.
Well, and so
And-
after the leadership board approves it, then it goes to the church to vote on. Like,
Yeah.
there's another step that if you remember here, you vote on their budget every year. So yeah,
Yeah.
there's a lot of checks and balances here, which
Mhm.
is good to add that trustworthy. So, I mean, you've talked about this a little bit, but we hit on this last week a little bit too about how people have different passions, and it's kind of tough to decide, especially if we're going to financially support another ministry. How do we decide who gets what? And that's a messy thing, and it goes back to the leadership board and checks and balances. But
Yeah.
I know you and the board try really hard to make this a trustworthy.
Mhm.
Anything else about that you want to hit on?
Well, we just have to lower the bar a little. So it is not only okay, but it's the only option
Mm-hmm.
to recommend a budget
Mm-hmm.
that personally, that specific line you wish were more or less.
Right.
You just have to accept that this side of heaven, we're not all going to agree on all 331 lines.
Right.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
On the other hand, the leadership board is confident that all of it is defendable.
Yep.
We're not wasting money.
Mm-hmm.
It all serves to advance our mission of helping people find and follow Jesus, but it's really no different than you and your wife.
Yep.
You're going to have to give and take, and you say, okay, we can agree that this is going to help advance our cause.
Yep.
And your goals of moving ahead.
Yep.
We do the same. So I'm proud of our leadership board, our staff. I appreciate the checks and balances. We want to be trusted.
Yep, absolutely. And on that, you and I, again, we were talking a little bit beforehand, and you have one of your kind of famous lines I've heard you say before about how close you are to an organization, you might view how they spend money a little bit differently. Okay. So why don't you drop your line and then explain what you mean by that?
So I think the line is something like, the closer you get to someone or an organization, the more warts you see. Mm-hmm. And so I've sometimes joked that when I stand on the stage and they're in the back row, this is eye candy. Well, no, the farther you are away, the easier it is to look good.
Right.
But they come close and they see
if you could see what I see right now,
they see the 57-year-old wrinkles and the aging skin. And so, the principle is the closer you get to a person mm-hmm. or an organization, the more deficits and warts you see.
Yep.
And I don't want to destroy anyone's naive impression of an organization. And right. I'm going to give some examples that are just examples and mm-hmm. are not, but there are a lot of radio ministries that Christians give to, or television ministries, or even wonderful. We throw lots of money and time into Samaritan's Purse. Mm-hmm. It's a great, great ministry.
Yeah.
But I can guarantee that if you get close to Samaritan's Purse, you're going to see that they employ people that are kind of crotchety. Mm-hmm. There's some spending practices that, again, don't send me any emails. But you're going to see some things you disagree with. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you're far away from the Billy Graham Association, mm-hmm. everything is good.
Right. I
don't care if it's focused on the family mm-hmm. or Billy Graham or some Ravi Zacharias guy that you listen to. And I just encourage our church, I've said this before, I'd rather be a part of a church where you see me up close, mm-hmm. you see our staff up close, you see everything. You're going to see some warts, mm-hmm. but we're going to be real, mm-hmm. and we're not perfect. Yep. But it's very interesting because a lot of people give naively mm-hmm. to an organization. They have no clue the details of how they waste money,
right? Or
how their hiring practices, or that person got fired and they shouldn't have been fired, and mm-hmm. you hear nothing,
right?
Because you're so far away.
Yep.
And I'm a part of a local church, and so this church sees all the warts and the drama and when there's a conflict. But I'd rather be a part of real life,
mm-hmm. right,
than removed. But mm-hmm. that's just me.
Yeah. I don't know, choose my words carefully, but I was at a place that received a lot of Christian donations.
And it's a wonderful
organization. But you're absolutely right that the closer you get, the more you see the problems. And when you're there every day, you see things that other people don't get to see. And so, and I think what's tricky with churches is typically people get more engaged with their local church than they do with one of those other organizations.
Right.
So if you're coming on every Sunday, every Wednesday, and you're singing in the choir and you've got a kid in Awana or a Wednesday night or whatever, like the more time you spend here, it's true, you're going to see a rapper on the floor that you won't see at Ravi Zacharias Ministries, whatever.
You're going to see a relationship that's not healthy, or a staff member that's not pulling their weight, or you're going to be in a conversation and that church member, all they do is yell and scream and divide, and you're going to see stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'd rather be real.
But the point is that that's true everywhere.
Absolutely.
And that we'd rather be real and open and honest about it. And that goes back to the trustworthy thing that I think we work really hard. I know we work really hard at being the real people, especially since that's part of our official tagline, at being really transparent with all of this. And the 2 Corinthians 8 was a good biblical mandate for that.
Yeah.
So
eager and trustworthy, two great things. And
Cool. So looking behind and ahead a little bit. So this past Sunday was Advanced Commitment Night. So we had a lot of people there. Thank you to those of you who joined us for the kind of next big kickoff of the Forward campaign. It was really cool to be all the adults in the worship center and all the high school kids were in the activity center. Then for all of us to come together at the end and sing a few songs together. It was a pretty cool. We don't get to do that very often.
No,
so it was a cool.
It was good.
So you want to give a quick recap? What was Advanced Commitment Night?
Yeah, we've been asking our church because we believe in the Forward campaign and God is leading us to a new day. We're not apologizing for asking them to dig deep. I've been saying we should always be generous, and then there are seasons of sacrificial generosity. We're inviting our church to give sacrificially for these next 2 years to help us pull off a vision, right? Mm-hmm. And so no apology. We're excited about this, but we're asking people to make this added commitment. Yep. And we knew a bunch of them were ready and pumped up and engaged, and this was kind of a way for them to do advanced commitment. So it was a great evening. We ended up being able to shoot a bunch of videos of people who were all excited about it. Yeah. And we ended up in a cool moment meeting with the high school access group that was also doing the Forward thing in the activity center. We sang a song or two together, and then we just enjoyed hanging out. So it was a great evening.
And we did film a lot of people kind of explaining what they were excited about, how they were contributing to the Forward campaign. And so you'll start seeing those videos over the next few weeks. So thank you to those of you who did that. You ended that night on a kind of interesting note. Some people may have seen a video on our Facebook page. That post is kind of blowing up. So one of our Access students is a very good basketball player. How did this come about, Brent? What happened here?
Well, in the activity center, it was full of life because there's adults and kids, and there's a bunch of dessert, and it's a happy time because we're all excited about our church and moving forward. But they had a basketball goal, and it was great. But some of the guys are shooting, and one guy could jump pretty good. Mm-hmm. And so someone else told me, "Hey, Brent, stand here." And so I stood with my back to him, and the guy leaped over my head and dunked it. I felt like a hot shot, and cool. I didn't even leave the ground.
It was pretty impressive.
It was great. But it was a good evening.
It was a great evening. And you can see the video on our Facebook and Instagram if you want to see Brent getting leaped over. So yeah, thanks to those of you who came on last Sunday. It was a really cool evening. And of course, you want people to come this Sunday. This is our last sermon sort of of the series.
Yeah, and we're coming to an end. March 1, of course, is our Commitment Sunday, and we're going to invite everyone to. We want 100% engagement in moving forward, and so that's going to be a great day. So this Sunday, I will actually quote Acts 17:11 or something, and it just says that the Bereans, that's from a city, they were of noble character because they listened eagerly to what Paul said, and they examined the scriptures to see if what he said was true. Yeah. Every Sunday I get fact checked, and I should. I don't want to teach wrong things. Right. But this Sunday, and I gave you a teaser before, and I'll give another one. This Sunday, we are looking at a passage in 2 Corinthians 9 that has a familiar phrase, especially if you grew up in the church. And that phrase is, God loves a cheerful giver. And it is the verse, in my opinion, that is most misused to help defend not being generous. And so I want to say some things about a tithe that I imagine some people will disagree with. It'll be interesting. And I just want them to examine the scriptures. And I do want them to fact check me. Yeah. But bring your phone with my email. Start emailing me even before I start preaching.
Because you're going to say,
I didn't like that.
At some point, you're going to say the line, "Don't send me any emails." That's not the
I won't say that.
Okay.
Now I can't. So it's just a lot of information that people don't know. Do you know that the Old Testament actually required a 23.33% tithe?
Wow. No.
So there were 3 tithes. Okay, we got 1 minute here, and then we'll wrap up.
All right,
2 minutes. So there was a tithe to the temple.
Okay.
to the priests, to the Levites, to the pastors.
Mhm.
Okay. And that tithe is mentioned by Paul. And I'll bring that verse up. And Paul says, in the Old Testament, you brought this tithe to the temple. You need to bring your tithe to the church. And so I believe that that first tithe of 10% is what is still required today.
Mhm.
But that's 10%. There was a second tithe.
Wow.
It's crazy, Matt, because the second tithe was to take a tithe of your produce and your livestock
Mhm.
and eat it.
Hmm.
So it was 10%, and it was called the tithe of feasts. And you were supposed to go to Jerusalem and a big party. Everyone just celebrate, invite the poor, invite the Levites, but you eat the second tithe.
Wow.
And it's a celebration. It even says if it's too far for you to travel, sell it, turn it into money, go to Jerusalem, buy a bunch of stuff, and have a party.
Wow.
So the first tithe was given to the church. The second tithe was celebrated.
Wow.
Okay. And then every 3 years, you were supposed to give 10% to the poor. So that equals 3 1/3 average per year.
Yep.
And so that's where people, if you've heard, the Old Testament required a 23 1/3%
Wow.
tithe. Okay. But 10% of it was just eating, man, a big party.
No, we should bring that back.
Okay.
That sounds okay to me.
And so I want to talk about what's God's expectation, and do we just give what we want out of a cheerful heart, or is there an expectation? I think it'll be interesting.
Good.
That's
Awesome.
coming up this Sunday. And
Yeah.
Matt's going to start giving 23 1/3% of his.
If 10% goes to a big party, maybe I'll consider it. But all right, well, wrap it up here, Brent. So, join us on Sunday. We'll be back here next Thursday to talk about that. So maybe you can break down some of that.
Yeah, we'll
in
break
some
it down a
detail
little
next
more.
week. But so thanks again for everybody joining us today and this past Sunday. Real quick, I wanted to give a soft launch. So I've had a few people say, "Hey, the Midweek Rewind is great, but I can't watch live." So what I've been working on, we're going to have a podcast of Midweek Rewind. And it's actually officially out now.
Okay.
So you can go find it on Apple Podcasts, but we're gonna roll it out kind of slowly. So you're getting the first initial sneak peek here. So if you're watching an hour later and you want to listen in your car or the gym or whatever, it is on Apple Podcasts, but we're doing kind of a soft launch as we work out some bugs. We'll kind of let you know when the full thing is happening. And
we do appreciate people listening live or
absolutely.
Afterwards, because we need regular reminders throughout the week. We set one day aside, come on Sunday, but our brains, they just forget. And so I appreciate you jumping in on this, because our intent is to do a midweek. Oh yeah, we're still following Christ. This is what we talked about. So I'm grateful.
Yep. And that's one reason why we post on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter every day, either a quote or a scripture from Sunday, because we want to keep this top of mind for people. So, all right. Well, thanks again for watching, everybody. Have a great rest of your day, and we'll see you Sunday and next week.